Welcome to the Dev Banner. This is Eric. Today's how-to episode is debugging in Visual Studio Code with Go. Now, first of all, you'll need to start, if you have installed Go, go ahead and install it. And when you do that, you'll probably be prompted to install some additional tools. Those tools are found, and I'm on a Mac, so Shift Command P. On Windows, you'll probably have to figure out how to open up the palette. And it's actually the show all commands. It's right here. So, and then if you start typing in Go install update tools, you'll get this list. And we're looking at making sure that this delve Go debugger is installed. So I'm going to install it. It's already installed, but I'm just going to go ahead and press OK, and my output is succeeded and everything looks great. So once that's installed, we can go ahead and look at the small program I wrote to kind of show how we're going to debug. And in here I have just simple, I'm going to add two numbers. It's kind of verbose, but we can walk through it and show what's going on. And then I have this, you're going to give me your name. This parse input is just a little function that will read from standard in and take it, convert it to a string, and then same thing with the number, and it's going to randomly pick a number and then display it out to you. So once you have that, you'll see that I already created a breakpoint. If as we go and look at more of the debugging, that you'll see a list of breakpoints. So here is this run and debug. You'll see a little bug in the run. If you click that, then you'll see the breakpoints I actually have already, and you can get rid of them right here. I believe that's the line number that it's on. And then once the first time you open this up, you're going to see this run and debug, but I want you to click a launch JSON file. And what that's going to do is we're going to go and launch a package. And what's that going to do is it's going to create this JSON file underneath a .VSCode. I typically think that you should probably not ever check these in, because sometimes you might put in credentials as environment variables that you never want to check in as a in your GitHub, but that's not here nor there. Actually, let's just take all that out. So so what this does is this creates a launch.json file in Visual Studio under vs.vscode, and we are launching this package. Let's go ahead and change this to debug main. You can call this whatever you want. By default, it does this file dir name, and if you look at predefined variables that are in VS Code, file dir name is the current open files folder path. I don't technically like that, because then you'd have to be in a file that you want to start debugging when you press a run and debug. I like to use this workspace folder. So we're going to go into here, and we're going to start typing workspace folder, press enter, and now I could be in any file, and if I press the run and debug, then it's going to run that program. So let's go ahead and do that, even if I'm in launch.json, and you'll see that it hits my first breakpoint. And if these are your controls up here, and you can do the F10 or F11 or F12, and I think this is 5. And this is continue, so this will go to the next breakpoint, like so. Continue will step over, and since I'm done at the end of a function, it goes on to the next line after the function. I'll go ahead and stop that. We're going to run it again. And I just wanted to see that there's these local values that are being set dynamically as it encounters them. So you'll see 2 shows up. Now you'll see total shows up. And then if you're in a function and you're like, oh, I'm done with this function, I just want to get out, you can do this step out and it'll go to the next line after that function call. And then the problem with dealing with standard in is if you continue, you'll see that like, hey, what's going on? None of these work. I can do a pause, but nothing's going on. Well, in the debug console, it's asking for you, what is your name? And it's waiting here on this input from standard in. You can't do that from here. And so it's really, really hard to, when you're doing with standard in stuff, debugging like we're doing, like you want to. So here's how you get around it. So come back over here to JSON, launch JSON, and we're going to add configure. And now we're going to go and do attach to local process. And we're just going to leave that as it is. So once we've done that, and we've configured that attached to process, the launch.json, we're going to start our program. And it's actually better to do .go build, debug your whatever you've built. And we're going to go ahead, and what that's doing is now that's stopping at this parse input, which is wants to read from standard in. Now we can go ahead and do attach process, run that, and find the debugged tut. Now here we're sitting here waiting, as you can see. So here I can go ahead and press Eric, and then it's going to break at this next line because we are waiting. It was waiting right here. And now we can go ahead and we can step through. We can print. Now you'll see here's the problem, and this is the kind of a gotcha. The normal stuff that you see in the locals is not really, you don't see very much when you're attached to process debugging. It's kind of frustrating, but in this case, I wanted to show you when you're dealing with standard in kind of scenarios that this is your option, and it kind of stinks. So we'll do the same thing. We'll go to here, this next standard, standard in, and then where it's going to do 30, and we're going to walk through this, and you'll see that index 30 was actually there, but this index string, what I got from the standard in, is not. Pick random works, but see how index went away because you went out of focus down into this method, and you came back and it just disappeared. So it's not always reliable. And then we're just going to finish. So there's one more thing I wanted to show you, and that is with this other executable I have. And let's go ahead and debug this, but we're going to need to go back to launch JSON. And this is why I like the workspace folder. So we're going to add a new one, and we're just going to launch file. And file, once again, is the current open file. You could use that, but you'd have to always have this thing be open. And if you're not, and I'll show you what happens here. I'm on launch JSON, and we're going to do launch file, which is this brand new one I just opened or added, right? And you're going to get this directory. There's no, it must be invalid go directory. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up this one, and it's gonna launch this. Well, what if we were in a valid go direct file, and we come over here and we said launch file? It's going to come back and it's not an executable file. So those are kind of the gotchas. And so that's why I like to use the workspace and just give myself, if I have a bunch of different main files, I just like to, name it as I need, and just have all of these. And I'm just going to call this debug, just so there's a difference. And so at this point, I can just go ahead and say, run it, and it's gonna open up this file and break on that breakpoint I put. And you'll see that I'm going to print this stuff, and I'm going to run it, and it says, here I am, I'm in debug, hello Eric, welcome to, and then it has this config.planet. Well, the problem is I have it. So how do I do that? How do I get config.planet? Well, config is coming from this config folder. If I open that up, planet is coming from this environment variable. So if I echo debug tut planet, it says earth. So, if I go into command and go to debug and then go run main.go, it's going to say welcome to earth. It finds it. But in debugging, that's another gotcha. It doesn't load your environment variables from your session. And so what you need to do is you need to add this object into your configuration, and this is just a key value set. So we're going to call this debug tut planet, and we're going to set it to Mars. Okay, now let's go ahead and come in here and go debug, start it, and walk through it, and you'll see that this guy now says Mars, because VS Code said, hey, here's some environment variables I'm going to set for you for your session of debug, and there you go. And so also if you needed some arguments, so like in menu.text, and those are your arguments that you want to send to as you send to the executable, you would need to set it something like args, and in this case it's an array, and you can do this in one line or multiple lines, but it would be -f and main dot txt, and that would be the equivalent of setting those arguments for your debugger to use. And so that's debugging in Go, and I hope that's helpful, and I will see you next time. Please subscribe to the channel and make sure notifications are turned on.